What if 98% of your country's entire revenue depended on another country who you recently seceded from?
In the late 1800s, France claimed several areas, including present-day Sudan. In 1899, France ceded this area to Anglo-Egyptian rule. Since it was not under joint authority, it was divided into northern and southern provinces. In 1943, Britain started preparing the northern provinces for self-government. They established an advisory council for the 6 northern provinces. In 1946, the policy was revised into creating just one government for both North and South Sudan provinces. The South felt betrayed when they found out that they would be governed by authority figures from the North. The language of the new government was Arabic, even though the South was all trained in English. Of the 800 government positions, only 4 were given to Southerners. The first civil war began in 1955 before Sudan was even fully independent. Sudan became officially independent January 1st, 1956. Sudan was in the midst of a civil war when it declared its independence. This war lasted until 1972 when the Addis Ababa Agreement was written. This agreement established a southern Sudan autonomous region and gave a slight degree of autonomy. Sudan was relatively peaceful for the next decade. In 1983, President Jafar Namiri declared Sudan an Islamic state, even though the majority of the South was non-Islamic. This was a violation of the original agreement, causing the Second Civil War. This war lasted for 22 years, killing roughly 2 million people. This war ended with the Nairobi Comprehensive Peace Agreement. This created a 6-year autonomy, with the South ending with them taking a vote on whether they would secede or not.
After the 6-year autonomy, Southern Sudan held a referendum in January 2011 on whether they would secede from Sudan or not. This referendum has an overwhelming 98.83% of votes in favor of independence, so the Republic of South Sudan was established. On July 9, 2011, South Sudan gained its independence from Sudan, allowing it to have its own government.
Oil exploration in Sudan began in 1959. Egypt, an Italian oil company, decided to explore northeast Sudan near the Red Sea, hoping to find oil. However, no oil was actually found. No oil was actually found in Sudan until 1979, when the American company Chevron found oil near Abu Jabra al-Sharaf, which are both on the Darfur-Kordofan boundary.
Red leather, yellow leather. Chevron found 2 very large oil fields in Sudan and got greedy, so they started drilling, completing at least 87 more wells. They did not find hardly any oil and ended up losing around $880 million due to dry wells. Chevron stayed in this area on producing the initial 2 wells they found up until the Civil War began in 1983. Once the Civil War began, they suspended operations in Sudan, trying to wait out the war. However, 3 of their employees got killed in crossfire, and Chevron decided it was in their best interest to suspend operations.
Sudan's oil production really began to pick up in the late 1990s, growing rapidly starting in July 1999, when the export pipeline that runs from South Sudan through the north to the port of Sudan In October 2000, when the exporting was in full swing, it surpassed agriculture as being the number one export, adding up to 90% of export earnings in 2010. Most of Sudan's oil is in the Muglad and Malut Rift basins in the southern part of the country. Sudan has mainly two types of oil, one being the higher quality Nile blend oil, which is a medium low sulfur waxy type of crude oil, where Dar blend is a heavy sweet crude that isn't as sought after and usually sold along with the Nile blend at a discounted price. South Sudan has a majority of oil reserves between the two countries, coming in at around 3.5 times the amount of oil found in northern Sudan. Northern Sudan, however, has all the pipelines, refineries, and export shipping ports that produce and export the oil found in southern Sudan. Initially, the South and North Sudan were splitting the profits at an equal 50-50 margin. However, when they split up, disputes started occurring with the prices each was charging. Sudan requested transit fees between $32 and $36 per barrel, whereas South Sudan was offering transit fees of less than $1 per barrel. Tensions escalated when Sudan began to confiscate barrels of oil and unpaid debt, so the South shut down production. South Sudan started producing up again in April 2013, and now South Sudan is looking to build its own pipeline, bypassing Sudan's pipelines, making them self-reliant, providing them with all of the revenue from oil. Oil accounts for 57% of Sudan's total government revenue and 78% of all the exporting profits. In South Sudan, oil accounts for 98% of total government revenue in South Sudan, and since they don't have any way to export oil because they're landlocked, they have no revenue from the exports. Sudan as a whole produces 5 times the amount of oil it uses, leaving the rest of the oil up for exporting and making money for the country.